Looking a little sparser than usual. We got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18,
After the career interview, heavy day.
8. I guess we're mostly here. More than half of us anyway. Okay, well, main thing I wanted to do today is make sure you guys not only understand genetic algorithms, but are comfortable with them at an intuitive level. If we achieve that, then I feel really comfortable with you doing this assignment, and then we can move on to the next topic. So let's start with that. Any questions about last lecture or about genetic algorithms before I jump into it? Yeah?
I had a quick question about whenever we show our answer in it, if you want us to run the code to pull back a new one each time, like a new evolved thing each time, or do you just want us to copy and paste the...
Oops, I forgot the internet. Yeah, I'd like it to just work for the grader. And the way to do that is after you evolve this big gene that you like, print it to the console, copy it, paste it in your code. Now it's hard-coded, and now you can battle your gene versus Bob gene, and it'll just work. So that means the grader's not actually going to see your evolutionary optimizer and won't really be able to check that you even did it right. But please have your code that runs evolution or simulated evolution in there somewhere so that we could do it if it came down to it. But ultimately, make it deterministic so that when the grader sees it, you'll know for sure it's going to just work, and then there's no issues there. Okay. There, now I have that. Any other questions? Cool. Out of curiosity, how many of you have started this assignment? It's pretty easy, isn't it? Any major snags?
I'm having trouble making the AI less stupid.
Okay.
It gets progressively less stupid over time, though not in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. Well, this is probably the first lesson of genetic algorithms, is they're really, really slow. So I don't know that that's necessarily wrong. When you say it gets better, but it takes a long time, do you mean insane amounts of time, or,
Well, I mean,
normally, as in 5 minutes, or as in 3 days?
okay, first of all, how long is it supposed to run to take like 50,000 generations?
So, well, it depends what you define as a generation. I guess technically a generation implies that every member of the population has been advanced through time. I think I actually did 50,000 iterations, which sort of means I did 50,000 times of applying a diversifying operation, a tournament, and a...
Yeah, that's why I was counting.
I think I did 50,000 tournaments is what happened.
Yeah, that's why.
And between each tournament, I did some number of mutations. Can't remember how I did it. And some number of... And then I replenished however many I killed off. I think I killed off a third of my population each time.
Because right before class, my was running at about 70,000 generations, and it still wasn't beating Bob.
Okay. What that means is I mutated in a slightly better way than you did, or it just got lucky on mine and didn't on
if
yours.
I had Bob in my population, I beat yours within 100 generations.
Okay. That's not surprising. And that gives you a real easy way to sort of cheat on this assignment. And by sort of cheat, I mean, I'm not defining that as cheating. So you may do that, but it does mean that's kind of lame, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, so while admitting this assignment is kind of lame, and I apologize for that, I don't want to change it at this point because plenty of you have already gotten started. Okay, yeah.
I had the same thing going like one of the guys from last week said, where just in the random population it already beat Bob. Like,
Dang.
so now
Is it
rotating.
possible that there are multiple dominant strategies and it just depends on who you're playing?
Yeah, so the game is definitely chaotic, and I know that because... How do I know that? Well, I thought about it for a long time, and I couldn't think of a strategy that was really easy to code up that would always do it. I guess that doesn't mean it's chaotic, but I don't know. out of curiosity, have you tried visualizing it? Meaning, you beat Bob in the tournament. Have you watch it play out and see what it does?
Yes.
How does it beat Bob?
Swerves. Lets Bob
It swerves and Bob just misses?
Yes.
And mine with
Okay.
Bob Jr. just smacks it super hard.
Yeah,
Okay.
mine just hit it
Mine
quick
like
and
hits
fast.
it and waits, and then Bob just runs into the wall after hitting him.
Okay. Well, you know what? That sounds slightly intelligent, doesn't it? So therefore, we have demonstrated that evolution can produce something that's slightly intelligent. I'm going to say that's not really awesome, but it's slightly intelligent. So if you just ran it for many, many generations with some kind of harder problem, with some kind of more interesting metric, presumably something interesting would come out of it. Is that a fair argument? Well, I think it's a valid argument anyway. That does mean this assignment isn't really testing your evolutionary optimization to its limits, but it is testing it. So I'm going to call that good. Sorry for the lameness of this assignment. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, real quickly. So as we do mutations for the next Gaussian, what do we know? What like limits we should set from the onset? Like from what possible values we should, the range of possible values that we should toggle each read by, or is that in and of itself one of those meta parameters that like is gonna get evolved as it goes?
You're saying what are the max and min values that a weight should ever be?
Yeah. That's a better way to put it.
Okay. I do want to talk to you a little bit about how neural networks work, and I think that intuition is necessary to really tell what the weight should be. In theory, it should go from negative infinity to infinity. In practice, probably about negative 30 to positive 30 is the extreme limits of it. If you were to clip them at about negative 30 and 30, then no ill effects would happen. That wouldn't stop your neural network from representing anything you wanted. There's the quick answer. I'll give you a better answer as we talk about it. Okay? All right. Actually, before we even get into it, let's look at this. So, somebody sent me an email. Have you seen this before? Somebody made a JavaScript-based website that's doing evolutionary optimization inside of a physics engine. And it randomly generates these, well, pseudo-randomly generates these boxcar designs for a car that's supposed to drive. Now, obviously, these designs are mostly stupid because it uses triangles and wheels. But eventually, it starts to find one that works. And the more it evolves, the more it starts to get moving. So now, the next generation, once it starts over again, it'll use more of that one that got really far, because that's how it measures fitness. And we'll see that eventually it learns to build intelligent boxcar designs. Plus, it's just darn amusing, so we can sit and watch it for a little while, right? Hey, got a pretty good one now. It made it to the red line. So now we'd have to watch it for a whole generation. It's, let's see, somewhere I set the population size. I don't remember where that is.
If you scroll up, I think in there.
Okay, my population size is 20, and you see it's working through all 20 of them. As soon as it gets down to 20 tries, then it'll reset, and the new population will be emphasized more like the ones that were successful. Hey, there you go. I think this one's gonna make it. Oh, it got stuck. It weighed too much. Okay, now it's on the next generation. And I think it's going to be a little bit more intelligent this generation because it had the experience of the previous generation. There were obviously still some bad designs in the population, so it's going to do some dumb things. But hey, it came back. And the one with no wheels, obviously stupid design. Okay. But this is just fun with genetic algorithms. Down here, everybody posts their the links for versions that they think are really cool. So let's try one of those. We'll just seed it. What's that one? Input seed car. There's a pretty darn good car that evolved. You have to wonder how long somebody sat and watched this thing before that car emerged, right? I mean, you know somebody has wasted hours upon hours of time here. Okay. And lots of dumb ones. So let me show you one that I did. I'll let that play while I'm getting it open. Okay, I'm building my code for just a minute. Hey, it made it. I should have built this before class, I apologize. Actually, while that's building, let me show you another one. Lab wiki. All cooperation. Now let's see. This one's interesting. Oh, don't tell me they took it down. Oh, good. Okay, so they took a bunch of, they took a physics engine and applied evolutionary optimization to it. This is after many, many generations of evolutionary optimization. The way they measure fitness in this case is they see how far the thing walks before it falls over. And they built these robots with various sizes. What's really interesting is as you change the shape of the body and then evolve to walk with it, it adapts in ways that look kind of like how people adapt to funny body shapes, which is really funny. But the thing I find fascinating about this is, don't they just look biologically plausible? The reason that's cool is, well, hey, that implies that that's kind of what's going on, is biology's developing these gates through similar mechanisms. Okay, so here they show after 6 generations they didn't do so well. After 17 generations they learned so well. Took 900 generations to really learn how to walk. There's something about a physics simulator that we really relate to, isn't there? I mean, we understand working in a physical environment. That poor robot. Okay, so here they're trying to force it to run at different speeds. I like the slow-mo here. So I guess we've reinvented the notions of gait and canter and gallop. Apparently kangaroos are effective. Doesn't that almost look like a real thing in slow-mo? Okay, so here the fitness function is, can you stay up, right? And they attack it a bunch of different ways until it learns to support it.
Learn to carry on.
At some point, violence against robots is almost not funny anymore once it starts looking too plausible, right?
No, it's not funny.
Okay, this one's great. So Guess it's learned how to turn. Or being mean to the big robot again. It's interesting how it's learned to kick just to get those big... It's learned to kick while it walks to keep those blocks off its path when it's going.
Oh, this is cool.
So here's different gravities. Astronauts apparently walk like that on the moon, which is rather telling.
Astronauts walk on Jupiter.
I don't quite get what the difference is here.
I think it's using less muscles.
Oh, okay. Oh, so if you... So in the normal one, it took into account energy expent in addition to whether it survived, and so it tried to minimize something more plausible. There's zombie. But yeah, if you don't put in the fitness function some metric of how much energy it's expending, it'll learn to expend crazy amounts of energy, whereas humans wouldn't do that. Okay. Unfortunately, the one I made isn't that cool, but just to show you that we can code it up too. Okay, here's mine. Jumper train. So I took a physics engine, and in the physics engine I built an artificial robot, and I used evolutionary or genetic algorithm to try and train the thing to jump. And I measured fitness by how high it got. By height, I mean I found all the parts of this robot's body, and I took the lowest part, and I called that the height. Does that make sense? So it's training right now. And if I do jumper policy 0, so here's what I gave it to start with. You didn't see it because it was in the wrong screen. But I started by giving it something that almost sort of jumps, but not quite, just because that helps it seed the evolution. It takes thousands of generations before it figures out to jump on its own. And so by giving it this, I gave it a better starting point. Okay. Now we're up to several. Let's try after 1,000 generations. Oops. Jumper policy 1,000. Oops. Here it is. It got a little bit higher, not a lot. But if you look closely, you'll see it learned to finally lift up its feet because that gives it more height. Okay, let's see what we're getting to. Now we're at 3,000. We'll try that one. I hate how it opens in that window. Now it's starting to look a bit retarded, but the thing is it gets a little bit higher. If you measure it empirically, this is a little bit higher than before.
In track and field, don't they have one of their jumps where they jump sideways over a bar?
They might, and maybe it's actually found that. I don't know.
It's the high jump, you don't go straight over.
The other thing is, I just put this robot together based on a ragdoll demo that they had. I applied my own impulse forces to the joints. I have absolutely no reason to believe this is biologically plausible. It's not like a human body, and the weight isn't distributed like they are in humans, and I did nothing to try and minimize energy use, whereas humans don't like using muscles. They don't have to. So there's all kinds of reasons why this isn't true to life. Anyway, here's the height it got to. So it used to get to 0.5. After a bunch of evolution, got higher. Then notice it actually drops. So it's getting worse for a moment, and then it got better again. Why do you think that happens? It's exploring, but also one thing I do in this genetic algorithm is I don't keep the best member of the population around for sure. Every member of the population has a chance of dying, and at this moment it looks like the best member of the population actually got killed off in a tournament, and now the best one's pretty bad. And yet it didn't take too long before it bounced back and a better one evolved. Does that make sense? Why would I do that? Or would your genetic algorithms be better if you kept the best member of the population around? What do you think?
Not necessarily,
Why?
because you may be finding a local best instead of a global best, like that terrain map you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's look at this one. It's got up to 0.83 by 8,000. Let's see how it does it. 8,000.json. Okay, that's hilarious. Watch this.
How big are those JSON files each?
It's however many weights I put in my neural network. I don't know. Let's see. K policy 9500. Let's word wrap it. That's it. So I used a really small neural network in this case. The nice thing with using a small one is there's not a lot of weights to mess with. It evolves really quickly. But yeah, this is a pretty tiny model considering it's controlling such a sophisticated robot. Anyway, we've left all plausibility at this point, but hey, it's getting higher. So see how high it is now. 84. Still stuck around 10,500. Let's look at that one, and then we'll be done with that. 10,500.json. Where'd it go?
You just viewed the policy.
You K'd it instead of.
Oh, I just viewed it. Thank you. That's what it was. Too many things going on here. Okay, jumper policy 10,500. That actually doesn't look much different, but here's what it did. So it gets on its toes and then flings its body and lands on its head. Maybe we've discovered the new way that high jumpers could actually get better. I don't think so, but there we go. Okay, so imagine that you had imagine you have some kind of a surface. Where vertical position represents how stupid it is. And so we want to get farther down. And maybe your population is distributed like these big circles. There, 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 and there. We'll say he's right down there. So this is what's called a local optimum. This is the global optimum. The local optimum is, oh, I'm on the wrong side. Local optimum is not the best, but it's the best around here, right? Global optimum is the best place you could possibly get to. And in this case, what's the horizontal axis represent?
Genome?
It's some encoding of your chromosome or your genome or whatever values you're trying to evolve, right? Now, I only have one dimension to work with here, but what if we keep this guy alive because he's the best one we've ever seen? What will happen?
We'll never get to the actual maximum.
Yeah, well, by never, we
Take
might.
longer.
It might be that we just get the lucky mutation that causes one of these guys to be way over there. And if we do, then he'll become the new best one, and then we'll evolve from there. And that'll actually be a really, really good thing for the algorithm. But the odds of getting that lucky are pretty slim. I mean, what are the odds that the right cosmic rays are going to strike a worm and its child is going to be human? It just doesn't happen, right? If your space is complicated enough, it's going to take many generations to get better. So, assuming it takes a lot of generations to find the global optimum, You see why we don't necessarily want to keep the best guy, the best one around we found? Because as long as it's there, every time we have babies, we're going to have one that's mixed with this guy, right? And every time we do a mutation, we'll drift away from it, but then they'll keep dying because he'll keep winning the tournaments. And so what kind of happens is because this member of the population's in a good spot, it's like those little invisible rubber bands pulling everything toward it. Can you kind of see that? I mean, it's not very explicit. Depending on how much you mutate and how long it takes and how strong your tournaments are, he might not kill everybody off, but you can only get so far away from the best guy before he's just going to win all the tournaments. And so you can't get too far from the best one. Consequently, sometimes it's actually best to let him die. And when he does, what ends up happening is you probably find it again. And then you get there again. But if they can die again, maybe eventually you stumble across this and it starts rolling down here, and maybe you rediscover this local optimum. But this guy hasn't died off yet. Maybe he does get killed off, but maybe after he does, this one evolves a little bit more, and pretty soon you roll down here and this one becomes the best. And now the algorithm is going to start exploring around this area. Once that happens, these ones over here, even in this local optimum, are much more likely to die, right? Because as soon as a tournament occurs, they're going to lose. And when you lose tournaments, you probably die. So what does this tell us about how to use a genetic algorithm effectively? Well, one is you want everybody to have a chance of death, even the best member of the population, probably. So when you do the tournaments, you probably don't just want to kill the bottom half. You probably want to do a tournament and then probabilistically kill everybody, but lower probability of killing the best ones and better probability of killing the worst ones. And what that does is it lets it kind of explore more. Okay? Now the question comes up, how strongly should you bias it? Well, that depends on the problem space. So imagine this global optimum is really far away and hard to get to, and this local optimum is really close to your initialization. You're going to have to do a lot of exploration to get to the global optimum, right? So in that case, we need to not bias it too strongly. So we almost want everyone to have almost equal chances of dying, maybe just slightly better chances of living if you win the tournament. Does that make sense? And in that case, it'll just spread out kind of randomly, but very slowly evolve towards better genomes. One could ask, how much pressure do you perceive on planet Earth? Do less fit individuals, how hard is it to survive if you're a suboptimal person? That's not going to go very well. I don't want to get into the whole Aryan race or anything wrong like that. But, I mean, what can I say? How about people with glasses? Do you feel that people with glasses should all be put to death? Probably not, right? I mean, I have pretty bad vision. I just don't wear glasses because I don't like them. So if all the bad vision people were put to death, I would go with them. But since we can compensate for glasses, nobody gets eaten by dinosaurs anymore. Do you see that it's not that important for us to have great vision? And so these days, a lot of people don't have great vision. Is that disconcerting? Have you ever noticed that humans are just kind of weak compared to, say, the immune system of a bloodhound or your dogs can eat raw meat and they don't get sick, right? What happens if we eat raw meat? Probably go into the hospital. Well, isn't it interesting that the more intelligent we get, the weaker we get? I don't know. There's something kind of disappointing about that. Nevertheless, it has something to do with how you want to use your genetic algorithms, is what I'm trying to get at. Somehow I lost my train of thought there. The point I was trying to get across is you want to make sure there's a whole lot of exploration going, but you don't want the pressure to be so weak that it takes forever to get there. I think I mentioned last time that if your surface is very clean, meaning pretty much looks like that. What kind of parameters would be effective for evolving over this type of a space?
Pretty mild mutation, not too crazy.
Okay.